is Academy Modernization Day. I see people loading in. Thank you for joining us. We do have a number of people who've signed up, and so we're excited to have good attendance here at our virtual meeting. And we see people still loading in, so we can give another couple of seconds as folks load in, and we will get started in a moment. Welcome. Our numbers are starting to even out, and I think we can get started. So, Dr. McCord.
Great. Yes, good evening, everyone. We're so excited about this project that we're embarking upon. Again, thanks, Chris. I'm Holly McCord, the superintendent of the Del Mar Union School District, and this is our next modernization that we will be undertaking, and we have really fine people working on this project, and we appreciate the community's input as we move forward, and we are very excited to hear about that tonight. You know, Del Mar Hills, we all know it's such an outstanding school, and Andrea Sleet is shaking her head. I mean, nationally recognized as a blue ribbon school. The history is so rich in our district, and I'm excited about the bright, exciting future for our kids and the entire community, and this project then takes us to that next step. So it's going to be great. Can hardly wait for it to get started, and actually someday in the not too distant future see our children and families and our staff interacting in new ways in that facility that make the learning and the teaching even more enhanced than they are today. So it's exciting. So I'll turn it back over to, in addition to those that you see on the screen, we do have two board members with us tonight, our board of trustees. You can't see their faces, but our board president, Erica Halpern, is here, and our board member, Catherine Fitzpatrick, is here. So thank you to both of those board members for coming, and our board is very interested in this project and will be a part of this process throughout as well. So thank you, and I'll turn it back over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Holly. Good evening. I'm Chris Delihanty. I'm the Executive Director of Capital Programs and Technology for the district, and I'm thrilled to be able to start this meeting and start our community engagement process. As many of you know, we had envisioned starting this a little while ago, and we got delayed due to some other projects in the district. We were very excited, and we wanted to be able to come and have some community input, and we've gotten staff and student input, and start that before the school year ended, because it allows us to get the project moving and keep the project moving in a timely manner, because we know how important it is to modernize what will be our second oldest school in the district. And so we do have two other members of our panel tonight, and so I'm going to let them introduce themselves, and I'll start with our principal, Andrea Sleet.
Good evening to all of our Del Mar Hills families and our two board members. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. I am just so thrilled and excited to be the principal of Del Mar Hills, as you all know, and this will be my second modernization with Del Mar Hills, because I was a teacher the first time we went through this process. So it's so exciting to be the principal and be a part of this whole process, to get input from our staff and our students and our families, and to now work with some wonderful architects. Del Mar Hills, as Holly said, is such a special school, along with all of our other schools in our district, and it has such a family feel, a collaborative culture, and a culture of thinking. And so it's so exciting to be in the process of modernizing our campus and just continuing to build on our culture and all the wonderful learning that's happening. So thank you for taking the time tonight to join us and to hear about the project and be able to provide input. So it's so exciting for our students and our staff and our families and our community. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much, Andrea. And we are very fortunate to be working with an excellent architectural firm in Acoustics, who has done great work in some of our neighboring districts, and we're very happy to be partnering. And so we have Steve Kendrick here, and I'll let Steve introduce himself.
Thanks, Chris, and welcome Del Mar Hills community. We're really excited to get this project going. Like Chris said, it's been a while to get going, but here we are. And I'm representing Acoustics. I'm the principal in charge of the project, and I'll be with the project from now until kids occupy the renovated facility. Our firm is 109 years old. We primarily do education facilities, and I'm really excited. In my 40 years of practicing, the community meetings and bringing in the community and getting that involvement is really the exciting part of what I do. I always like to say we do our best work when we have the client and the community involved in that project. It's because you can't cookie cutter these things. They have to be for that particular community. And Del Mar Hills is a unique building to start with, so it gives us a lot of unique opportunities as well.
Thanks, Steve. So I am going to move us into a presentation here, just for a moment. And we will get started. We are fortunate we are going to have an opportunity to share some information with you tonight. And then we will also take some time to be able to get some input, and so we have an opportunity to get input. And in addition, we've gotten input from our students and our staff at Del Mar Hills. And unfortunately, we're not able yet to meet in person and interact as we've done in the past. We do anticipate being able to do that as we come back to the summer. So we do have sessions that we'll be planning in the fall. And then I really look forward to being able to meet with you in the PAC and interact more directly as we've done in the past when we first started the bond, and we've had other conversations. And so we've done our best tonight to be able to find ways for you to share inputs and be able to get that so that we can build upon what we already know and do more work over the summer. So to start, I'm going to bring us through a little bit of the background. So as many of you know, the district went through an extensive process to update our facilities master plan in 2017 and 2018. Through this process, it really became clear that our focus on indoor and outdoor connections and views were a real priority. We had to focus on improving natural light, and especially at Del Mar Hills Academy, where we have some of those older windows that are darker, and getting the natural light in the classroom is of real importance. We know that there's a lot of research behind natural light and views to the outside that are important. Flexible, comfortable furnishings are in need, and we've been addressing that across the district, and we're excited to be able to look at that in our spaces here. And then spaces for learning where students from different classes can interact. And as we've done that work, we've looked at classrooms, and we did some prototypes in our facilities master plan, and we continue to work on these. We've been looking at this across the district and continue to develop these prototypes with input from staff and work with our instructional services department and development as to what the classroom should look like on the inside and how we should furnish them and how that directly impacts positive learning outcomes with those learning environments. We've also done work, and we did the study into what an innovation center should look like. And we looked at that. We're actually very lucky at Del Mar Hills in that we have great bones for this. We, over the last few years, have spent some time in taking down walls in certain areas and expanding what used to be the tech lab and the library, and taking that the science lab and the neighboring classroom, and really leading to what some of this prototype has looked like. And now we want to take some of those next steps with how that interacts with STEAM Plus and how it might connect to our outdoors. And then as we looked more directly at Del Mar Hills Academy, and we looked at Del Mar Hills in our facilities master plan process, we saw what will be our oldest school after we rebuild Del Mar Heights. And in this case, we have a substantial budget to make improvements. There are a number of areas that we really need to focus on. So we'll talk a little bit tonight about what must be done versus what should be done, and trying to get to the sense of that. And our architects and line office will be sharing information on how we'll go about making the biggest impact we can with this modernization. And we have some initial ideas that we'll be able to share, while also gathering input from you as a community. So that will help us to develop the design, as we've done with each of our projects that we've come to this point. Getting that input, as we have done in the past with staff and students and with our community, will really help, as Steve said, to develop a design that will meet the needs of all of our stakeholders. So we look forward to hearing more from you tonight as we dig into Del Mar Hills, and we're going to have Steve go through a little bit more detail talking about how we look at what must be done versus what should be done, what we'd like to do, and then looking at some of the areas that we'll gather some input. So I'm going to hand over to Steve to take us further into this.
Go to the next slide, Chris. So Chris talked about the things that we like to build this pyramid of must do, should do, nice to do. And the must do things, what happens there, it's things that we're required to do by code. Anytime we go to modernize a facility, there's certain things that we have to do to bring bring the facility up to code. So they sort of start off with that baseline, but then there's always a whole list of priorities after that, that depending on the budget, because we do have a finite budget for this, we have to prioritize that. And so to do that, what we do is we meet with what we call the core group, which is more leadership at the district. Then we meet with the teachers, the students, which we've already had one brief meeting with the students to introduce them to just the whole process, but not really talk a lot about specific things. And then with the community. And so we take all of that input, and then over the next few months over the summer, we'll process that and really develop this list of priorities of how are we going to get the most bang for the buck to modernize Del Mar Hills. So there's more leadership at the district. Then we meet with the teachers, the students, which we've already had one brief meeting with the students to introduce them to just the whole process, but not really talk a lot about specific things. And then with the community. And so we take all of that input, and then over the next few months over the summer, we'll process that and really develop this list of priorities of how are we going to get the most bang for the buck to modernize Del Mar Hills. So we do have an audience participation part of this presentation. So if you have your mobile devices ready, or you can type pretty fast on your computer with the URL, we're going to put up a QR code on the screen and a link to a Survey Monkey. So if you just scan your phone with that, it will take you to a series of 4 questions. And so the questions are, how would you envision a welcoming entry at Del Mar Hills? And what about improvements to the front office? What outdoor indoor connections or outdoor learning environments are important for the campus? What improvements to the fields and play areas should we consider? And then, is there anything else that you would see or think about that we should consider as well? And we'll keep the survey open, definitely all throughout this presentation, and perhaps just a little bit longer, but we want to be able to close it up and then gather that input and combine it with the input that we've already received from leadership and the staff. So I'll just be quiet here for a few minutes and let everybody think about that.
And Steve, I just put it into the chat as well, so people could click on the link in the chat.
Great. Great. Thanks, Chris. We forgot the Jeopardy music.
I'm gonna, just 1 second. I'm going to, apparently, because I disabled, I don't have the chat working right now, it didn't go through. So just 1 second. I'm gonna make sure that, want to try and make
it showed up on mine.
Okay.
Right. Well, I go because it just went to the panelists. I see. Okay.
And then Chris and Steve, it looks like one more participant joined us. So when you get a chance, we'll put the QR code back up so that person can get that.
And we'll put it in there. There we are.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
You got it. All right.
So we'll take a few more minutes.
Stephen, maybe we jump on to the next one and we could start looking at those, and then they.
Yeah, because that might help people think a little bit about it. So in this next slide are really the sort of the first 3 questions of those areas that we've been talking about. So one of the things we talked about where you see the number 7, that is one of the things that was identified in the facilities master plan was the front office improvements, and also the whole front door and the entry to the school.
it's one of the few schools, I think, that on the Del Mar website, it doesn't have a picture of the front of the school. It has a picture of the sign. So we're trying to improve that and make that more of a welcoming statement to anybody visiting the campus, the students, et cetera. So that's sort of this front piece of the school. And then the next question to do with the indoor-outdoor environment, you can see number 5 there and all of the yellow areas. Those yellow arrows are just an indication of where we would have opportunities to make those connections. And so depending on which classroom we look at, the opportunities vary, whether it be new windows or changing door locations, that sort of thing. But that gives you an idea of what could be done and what areas we'd be looking at for that. And then number 12, the big field area, which also includes the play structures. What are the thoughts there? Would we've talked about just in informal conversations, are the play structures adequate? Should they be replaced? What do we do with the fields? How far do we try to make our dollars on the project stretch to make improvements there? One of the things that we're trying to stay away from is changing anything with the community garden. It's such an asset to the school that we think we just leave it alone, potentially. It's if it works, why change it, so to speak? But so you can that'll help you maybe just jog your memory a little bit, or give you an idea of how you want to respond to in that survey. So, and then the last question in the survey is obviously, is there something that you don't see on here that you'd like to have us take a look at or address as we go through the design process?
So we're just going to give you another minute to hopefully give some of that input. We wanted to make sure that you had time to kind of type and write and not have us talking at the same time. We all kind of process things a little bit differently. And so we'll give another minute or so, and then we'll move into the next slide and have Steve share just a little bit more. Give you about 30 more seconds, and then we'll move on, and it will stay open, but just about 30 more seconds of kind of time to write and be with your thoughts. All right. Steve, I'm going to go to the next slide. And
okay.
Speak to this.
Okay, so you heard Chris mention that we've got some good bones in the school, and although the classroom shapes are kind of unique and we're working within that framework, the Innovation Center and the Science and Engineering area that in the yellow is really a big asset to the school in the way that the opportunities that are presented there. So just some initial thoughts where we sort of broke it down into sort of big areas, if you will. So the yellow is that innovation center and how we could create links directly to the classrooms and really help with the circulation and the wayfinding in the school. The blue area is admin and support. So that's where we're looking at addressing the entry to the school. How do we make that entry and everything more efficient for not only visitors coming to the school, but also the staff working in those spaces? There are some things that we saw that could be improved upon, so we'll be looking at those as well. And then the other big thing we're looking at is in the kindergarten of creating restrooms within the kindergarten space. Right now, the little kids, they've got to go outside and around to the restrooms at the top of this page here. So really trying to address that and keep those kids, they're a little smaller than all of the rest of the kids on the campus. And so keeping them in the same place and really improving that. And then in the classrooms, we're looking at potentially, how do we create those connections between the classrooms and bring in more daylight into the classroom? So one of the ways that we've done that in the past is to almost use like a glass folding wall that is between the classrooms, so you get the daylight through it. And then we've done a film on it, sort of translucent film that you can actually wind up writing on. It only becomes like a big giant whiteboard, but and we keep that down low where the kids are, and so when they're sitting at desks, they're visually not distracted by what's going on in another room, but yet above it, it's clear and open, and it brings that, share that daylight with several classrooms. So that's one of the couple of the things that we're looking at, just as ways to bring in more daylight and things to the classrooms. One of the things that we've looked at in the pack is, is there a possibility to create a music room in there? These are all early ideas. So this is part of the process that we go through now, is when we get all this input from not only the core group at the district, but the teachers and the students and now the community, as though we sort of put all that together and see what really makes sense. One of the things that we did note in the pack is the acoustics around the restrooms could be addressed. So when we start getting all of this information together, then we start filtering it through the must do, should do, nice to do pyramid that we have set up. So that'll set our priorities as we move forward during this design phase during the summer.
Thank you, Steve. And so I think that, we, as Steve said, these are sort of first blush ideas, but looked at some of those big spaces that had, already come up as we heard from our staff and we started hearing from our students. And so we are looking at these pieces, and you will see more detail and design and ideas that come back as we get more input as we come back in the fall. And so this is sort of a first pass where you get to see what it will start to look like, and we'll have a lot more detail and a lot more information based on the input you provide us, which is fantastic.
So do you want to go to the next slide, Chris? Or yeah. So the next steps for us are we've proposed having 2 more community meetings and culminating with a board presentation at the end of October. So working backwards, our next steps are working this summer with staff, and then when the teachers come back in the fall, bringing them back in for input. But then we'll have some of these ideas will be a little bit more presentable or a little more thought out. But also all this input that we've received, really it's been this last 4 or 5 weeks that we've gotten all this input. So really boiling that down. So when we come back in the fall with the community presenting what we heard, sort of where we, are the design concepts that we're, want to put forward as far as the priorities and things, and then come back a month later or so in early October to present, a pretty much finished project of what we would, or product of what we would be proposing to present to the board. That time, if there is additional feedback or something we could take that in and see how we could mold that into the project. So then once it gets presented at the board, that really, and the board approves it, that really presents or sets our design direction as we move forward and start refining the design, doing construction documents, and ultimately submit it to the state architect for approval.
And as always, we set a timeline, but we also want to get it right. And so our goal is to move through, and we wanted to be able to share some information and get input from you before school ended, so that we can do some of that work over the summer and then come back. And then we want to make sure that we get it right. So our opportunities in September and October are fantastic opportunities to get further inputs based on those ideas that Steve's talking about, where we bring back more detail and we get more input, and then we come back to you and get with more detail and get more input that we could then hopefully bring to the board, so that we can continue, as Steve's saying, with the process to go to DSA, so that we can keep the project moving forward towards the actual construction completion of the Del Mar Hills modernization. And our goal is to keep this project moving so that we can have those impacts to our students as soon as we can. And so that is the bulk of the presentation. I'm going to go back to I've put it in the chat, but go back to our survey, because this is truly the main gist of the point of tonight, is to get your input. And so that is why we had those three focus questions, and then another that was asking for other input, because it is very important to us that we get the input from the community, because we do have this time over the summer to be able to distill it down, combine it with our staff input, look at what our students have said. And I know that Ms. Sleet, actually, Andrea spent some time with students getting further inputs. They got to meet with the architects, but they also got to give her feedback. And so we're actually going to circle back with them in the fall. And at that point, we anticipate being able to do this live. It will be, I think, an even better process when we're able to be in the same room together, and we're able to show you some things and be able to have a more direct interaction, which is much easier to do in person than it is via a Zoom. But again, we hope that you will take some time to provide the input and share information through this survey, so that we can take that back and use it in our design process over the summer.
And just to share too, Chris, if I could just add to share with the community members, when our staff met with the architects, so that was really powerful to get initial input from them too. And then to have Steve and members of his team, two other members, it was Dan and Hugh as well, right, Steve?
Yes.
Just presented to the students and just talked about the job of an architect, but for them to interact with the real life architects that are going to be doing the modernization. It was really exciting. It was fun to hear the questions that the students asked, and they took the input very serious as well. So we're excited to share that.
Yeah, they did. I commented to Chris that most of them were, what do we do type questions, but there were a couple of questions that were very specific to Del Mar Hills.
Yes. And they asked, well, what I love the question of, have you ever made a mistake?
Yes.
that was a good question. So it was fun to see the students interact with you too.
Yeah, that was great.
We'll look forward to doing more of that.
And so with that, we are coming to the conclusion of the presentation piece. I am going to leave this survey link up and information up for a period of time, so that anybody who may have come late or may have missed a piece is able to still access that. We will keep it open through at least 6:30, the end of the allotted time we had for the presentation. I do want to thank Steve and Lionakis. Again, we've been working on this and meeting over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, but really it's kind of a quick time, because being able to have a staff meeting and some student meetings, and now the meeting with the community, we are at that information gathering point, and we appreciate the time and effort. We've had them come down and walk the site with us, so we've done a lot of that initial gathering of input and information, and I think we're getting that base that we need to be able to move forward with an exceptional design for the school. So thank you, Steve. We really appreciate the work you and your team are putting forward.
Oh, you're welcome. I mean, we really appreciate it because we know how hard the end of school is and how there's a lot more than the normal activities going on. So having staff be available and things has been very helpful. So thank you, Andrea, for corralling or, get everybody organized. I'd really appreciate that.
Absolutely. It's important. It's exciting work.
Great. So with that, I am going to sort of close up shop for Steve and Andrea. Again, I'm going to keep this open and on for the next 30 minutes so that people can provide the input. And I want to thank you again. This is really important, you spending the time and giving us the input, and we look forward to seeing you in person in September. For those of you that signed up on the Google form, we will send out input with your emails. We appreciate you taking the time to do that. That means that we get the right information from you and we can send that out. So we'll also send some information, and then I know Ms. Sleet will send information, and we'll publicize to ensure that we can get as much community input and interaction as we can in our September and October meetings. So again, thank you very much. I'm going to go back to presenting the slides so that you can continue with that input. Providing input, and I'll post it again into the chat for those that may have joined us late. And I hope you all have a wonderful evening. And if we don't see you, a fantastic summer.
Yes, thank you to all of my families. Thank you, Del Mar Hills families.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Steve and Chris.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so long.
Bye. right. Thank you and good evening.